the book, Baron. Welcome in, everybody. If you are new here, my name is Baron, and today we're talking about my February TBR. Unfortunately, the gray has once more encroached on Seattle. This time it's not for rain though, it's snow, so that's, I guess, a fun little switch up or something. At least it makes the cold temperatures worth it. Sorry if we've got a little bit of low lighting. Hopefully I can correct this when I edit the video. I'm gonna warn you, this TBR, unlike January where I felt like I got it nailed down, this one feels frantic. It feels all over the place, and yet somehow these are all the books that I'm excited about, and I don't know what that means. So I don't feel as confident that I'm gonna finish this whole bad boy, just because I don't know what's going on up here. It's also a shorter month, so I don't feel as confident that I'm gonna be able to get to everything anyway, and also I didn't account for any of the books that I'm planning to vlog this month, so just like take this with a grain of salt, I guess is what I'm saying. Without further preamble, let's get into the books. So first up, I have one that's been on my TBR for a really long time, and I'm finally getting to it, and it's Priest by Sierra Simone. So this is the first in an interconnected series. I think the series is literally just called Priest, and it's a taboo priest romance, as you could probably gather. So this is about a priest named Tyler Bell, and he became a priest, it sounds like, kind of like a little bit later in life. Like maybe that wasn't kind of the first thing he did necessarily, because it sounds like he had like a little bit of time as a bit of a playboy and then decided to become a priest kind of like later on and reform his ways. That is going well for him until a gal walks into his confessional one day. She wants to confess some sins of a carnal nature that she doesn't actually feel too bad about, and she's trying to puzzle through that. Needless to say, that ends up leading to him breaking his vow of celibacy and just screwing up this priest life that he's created for himself. Like I said, this has been on my TBR for a while. I've read all the other books. I've read the other two books in the series before this. I've literally read this series in reverse order, so I'm finally getting to the first book, the one that actually I think is the most popular and is most well known out of all of them. This is just something short and smutty, and that's kind of what I'm feeling right now because I just got done reading Kushal's Dart when I'm filming this, and I just I need something that moves a little bit faster, especially with the shorter month, but also just to make sure I'm like varying things up enough that I'm not getting in a slump. All right, next up is a book that I'm reading currently, and it is Blair by Anita Gray. So this is the first in a series. I think the series is literally just called Blair. This has 2 books out and is planned to be a 3-book series. It's a dark mafia captor-captive romance. So our heroine's name is Blair, hence the title, and she was captured as a child and trained to serve the whims of Maxim Markov, who is like high up in the Russian mafia. For the past 10 years, she's been part of this criminal underworld. She is trained to serve and protect Maxim at all costs, including her own life, or risk being brutally punished. That's how her life has been for many years, and things abruptly change when Charlie, an old friend of Maxim's, comes back into his life and shows an acute interest in Blair. At some point, Maxim ends up owing Charlie a debt, and he uses Blair to pay it off. 3 months with Charlie, and then she will return back to Maxim. The problem is, during that time, Charlie is determined to break her training. So this book was on my priority reads list for last year. It was one of those books that every time I saw the cover, I was like, oh yeah, I should read that. And then I would just never pick it up. And that continued on through 2024. So I was in a little bit of a situation where it's between my January TBR and this TBR. I didn't know what to read, and I was scared I was gonna go into a slump, so I was just like, quickly grab something. So I just grabbed this one because it was a priority read from last year. So I'm like currently, I think like maybe 15% into it, so this is one that'll for sure be getting to. Part of the reason that this initially appealed to me is that I do like captor-captives. That's like a favorite trope of mine. Feels weird to say. We're all friends here, right? It's like a little bit of a different spin because she's like part of his protective detail. It reads a little bit more action or a little bit more like Hollywood cinematic kind of feel. This one might be a stupid move on my part because there are 2 books out in the series. This book, which is part 1, and then part 2. Part 3 has been promised by the author since like 2022, and she's gone dark since. I haven't seen a post from her since 2023, like early 2023, like March 2023, and her website's down. I don't think we're getting that 3rd book, so this might be a completely idiot move on my part, but in fairness, when I read series, usually the first book is my favorite, and then the rest of them are just sort of like a sad letdown that I feel like I need to read because I want to complete things. Oh no. My neighbor is just like in their window playing with their curtains and it's making me nervous. Ugh. Act cool, act cool. Sitting on a floor in front of a camera for totally normal reasons, right? Okay, they're gone. Next up, I have Bound by Duty by Cora Riley. This is the second in an interconnected series. I think this is her Born in Blood series, and it's a mafia romance. This is about Dante, who is set to become the next capo of the Chicago outfit, and he had his wife pass away about like 4 years ago, and he's kind of just been haunted by her memory. I'm kind of getting the vibe from the blurb that he was like really actually in love with her. Either that or she cursed him, just actually haunted him ever since, but I'm gonna go with the first one because that seems more logical. But he needs to remarry so he doesn't appear weak. And so he picks Valentina because she also recently lost her husband. It was a marriage in name only, but it's just kind of it's a good fit. But Valentina is harboring some secrets from her first marriage, and she's very nervous that they're about to be found out. But then Dante just goes off and ignores her, and now she's like, well, wait a second. She's completely sick of being ignored. So it sounds like maybe something similar kind of happened with her previous marriage too, and she's determined to get his attention. The reason I want to read this one is because I read the first book last month, really, really loved it, but I was just kind of like bopping around to different mafia romances, kind of testing out a bunch of different series to see which ones I was going to commit to a little bit more, and this is one that I definitely actually want to read more from. My one pet peeve that I had with the previous book was that the heroine was a little bit immature, but this heroine is older. I think she's in her, like, properly in her 20s. So I have a feeling that we'll get a little bit more of a mature storyline and a mature heroine. These are like short, very tight mafia stories. They're under about 300 pages. So it's perfect because we got a shorter month. I have some longer books that are on this list. So it's nice to know that I have some that I can kind of more quickly get through. So I'm excited to get to this one. I want to know what Valentina's secret is. I have some suspicions and I want to know if I'm right. Next up, I have Iron and Ember, and this is by Helen Schurer? Sorry, Helen. This is a first in a series called Ashes of Thesmar, and this is interconnected with another series called Legends of Thesmar. And I think that one starts with a book that's like called Blood and Steel or something along those lines. So Ren is really distraught after the war, and she kind of lives life in the shadows, kind of licking her wounds and seeking vengeance for her friends who didn't make it. Ultimately, she'd really love to go to Drevnor, which is an alchemist academy that's really well renowned, and it only takes the most elite alchemists, but she just can't seem to get the opportunity until there's an attack on one of the kings of the Midrealm, and now they know they need her because it was using some sort of unknown alchemy. She ends up getting into Drevnor, but this place is deadly. There's trials, there's tests, and there's threats really lurking around every single corner. There's also, on the outside of this academy, some uprising and discontent that's happening among the people. There's a group targeting those of royal blood, which includes Ren. So she has Torge assigned to more or less be her bodyguard. Now, they're deeply familiar with one another because they fought in the war together side by side. There's been some simmering tension with them ever since. It's a little hot. It's also a lot cold. This one I wanted to get to because it released last month. I saw some really amazing reviews very early on here, and it's not a fae fantasy, so I was like, perfect. We're going with that goal of trying to get more into fantasy romance. Also, the hero has, it used to be blonde, but it is now gray hair because of something magic that happened. Controversial opinion, I like blonde heroes. Fight me. Actually don't, you'll probably hurt my feelings. But he's a hammer wielding bodyguard, and it just gives a little bit of that kind of like Norse mythology or just, you know, something that's not fae. I also get the impression that these characters are a little bit older because they've already been through the war and some time has passed. So I'm kind of getting the sense that there's going to be like some trauma that we're dealing with. So I just feel like this is going to like speak a little bit more to what I'm interested in fantasy. One thing that I'll warn you, because I'm an idiot and I started reading this already, and I didn't realize it was interconnected with another series this author did. So I'm having no problems reading it as a standalone, but if you want everything leading up to the war that this is taking place after, you should probably read that series first. So heads up. The next book I have is My Choice Is You, and this is by Mel Dow. This is a standalone contemporary romance, and it has some autism rep. So this is about Kavina. she's had a pretty privileged life. Her father is, or was, I guess, a pro baseball player, so she comes from money. And it kind of led to her being a little bit sheltered. So she seems to be aware of that potentially. And was like, I need to open up my life to more. And the last thing that she expects is to fall in love. Here's the hitch. The hero, Jasper, not open to love. He likes to stick to his friends, his family, his business, and he likes not being accountable to anybody. He likes the life that he set up for himself. We gotta figure out how that's all gonna work together. So the reason I grabbed this one is because Lisa from Babe in Library, I believe that is both her Instagram handle and her YouTube channel name. She had this on her priority reads list, and I'm gonna be honest, that cover model could sell this on its own, but she had several books on her priority reads list that I have really loved. So when I saw this one on here and I saw this cover, I mean, that alone sells it. I was really intrigued. So I'm really excited to grab this one. And I think this is something I'm gonna put kind of between some of my darker, heavier reads, because this one I think is gonna lean just a little bit lighter and probably more emotional, if anything. All right, next up I have Shattered Omega, and this is by Marie McKay. So this is a first in a series. I think it's the Poisonverse is the name of it. This is an omegaverse, why choose, and has amnesia. So the heroine can't remember the previous 19 years, but she has been told that she is not a regular omega. Her scent repels alphas and might even turn them violent, and so she is forced to hide. She's never going to have like the normal life that other omegas have. But she can't quite accept this, and she has unintentionally run into her scent mates, and she's hoping that if she can just kind of gently, subtly reveal herself, that they'll sweep her away from this kind of bland and awful reality that she's living in, and she'll be able to lead a more regular life. Unfortunately, things don't quite work out how she had hoped. Some very ruthless alphas end up swooping in, and they've shunned other omegas' attention, so it's a little bit like, why are they going after her? They want to blackmail her, for one, and they want her scent for themselves. And their pack leader is obsessed, a little bit unhinged, and he doesn't actually care what she wants, because he wants her. The reason I grabbed this one, this author is going to be at a book signing that I'm going to later this year, and has a really lovely special edition that you can pre-order for the series, so I wanted to check it out and see if I want to do that. But also, Cynthia has raved about this book. Well, not just this book, this author. In particular with this one, I remember her saying that this was a lot darker and grittier than a lot of her other books. I also never got to that omegaverse that I was planning to read last month. I don't know what happened to there. So I'm still a little bit overdue for reading an omegaverse, so I think I'm gonna try and grab this bad boy. Next up, I have Sunlight by Devney Perry. So this is the second book in an interconnected series called Haven River Ranch. This is small town and surprise pregnancy. So our heroine is new to town, as heroines often are, and she ends up having a little bit of a scuffle involving a grocery shopping cart, and the hero ends up kind of stepping in and helping her out with it, and he's a little bit taken with her. He wants to ask her out, but when she realizes what his name is, she's like, oh shoot, like it's not exactly that he's her boss, but he does own the ranch that she is going to start at the next day. So she's like, no, dude, we can't do that. So when she gets to the ranch, she's like, we're just gonna pretend. This is the first time we've met. I know nothing. We've never run into each other. And she's just like heads down, like ready to work hard. All the while she is harboring a massive crush on him that she just refuses to give into. So that changes when they have the holiday party and someone has a few too many glasses of champagne. And then they're like, well, shoot, maybe we'll just have like one night together. After one night, they can't exactly ignore each other because, she's pregnant. This one I got from Sam Reads a Little video that she just did recommending surprise pregnancy books. I'm a sucker for this trope every once in a while. I really like the caretaking that happens in these books, and damn it if that's not what I want from a book boyfriend. Well, I guess that or want to be kidnapped by a mafia boss, but you know, that's not really the point. Not only that, it also has like a little bit of golden retriever energy from the hero, and that's another thing I'm a sucker for. I just wanted something that kind of reminds me of things that I read in like 2020, maybe more so. Something a little bit softer. And I haven't really read a lot of Devney Perry lately. I took a pretty big break from her after, oh shoot, what series was that I read that I didn't get on with? I don't remember off the top of my head, but she's got a huge backlist. And so I wanted to give this one a go. All right. last up, one that I'm not as confident I'm gonna get to, but darn it, I'm gonna try. And that's When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. So this is a fantasy romance with dragons. I believe this is planned to be a series, but this is the only book out currently. I'm gonna be honest, I read the synopsis and I was like, what? So this is my best guess at what I think this book is about. So it sounds like there was dragons that were created by somebody, some sort of entity, and then upon their demise, these dragons went up into the sky and became moons. And that's sort of like their final resting place. But now these moons are falling down and there's shards of them everywhere. Something like that. That's background information, world building. So, I get this next part just so many different kinds of wrong. I have to freeze frame and do a voiceover because, oh my god, I'm embarrassed. Dragons do still exist. They just, when they pass away, their preference is to go become a moon and then sometimes they fall down back to Earth. Okay, that's the first point. Second point, the heroine, I claimed she was like a bounty hunter working for the crown. No, she's not. She is working for the rebellion and she ends up getting captured by the crown and then they want to make an example of her. Okay, and then I moved on to talk some nonsense about the hero, and in reality, I think he's probably some sort of king and or figurehead because it says he took the head of the king and now dons his melted crown. So I'm thinking he's probably a ruler of some part of this world. I can't figure out literally anything else other than that. I at least figured that part out, so good for me. Look, I did my best. And apparently my best is actually not that good, so that's unfortunate, especially for me because I have to keep doing these voiceovers, but also for you because you, for some reason, are listening to me. I'm so sorry about that. Anyway, back to it. There was a lot of fantasy words in there that I didn't fully understand. I've heard from many people that this is slightly confusing, so I guess I'll figure it out on the fly when I get into this book. But a very, very, very good friend of mine in real life sent me paragraphs long text about how much he loves this book, and this is probably one of the best fantasies he's read in such a long time. He was very upset when I told him I had not read it yet. I also have been kind of curious about this one in general, even from back when it released, because this is another one of those fantasies that it seems like people either are absolutely obsessed with, they're in love with, best of the year, or it's kind of like middle of the road. It was confusing. They didn't really like it. So I want to see where I fall on that. My loan for the audiobook is also coming in this month. So I feel good about my prospects of getting to it. I just hope that I can actually finish it because this one is a long one. But those are all the books that I'm hoping to get to in February. We shall see because, like I said, I didn't put together a vlog idea yet, so those aren't even on here. As you can see, very squirrely kind of TBR, a little bit of everything, grabbing from all sorts of angles, but I have quite a few books that I'm already starting to build up for my March TBR that I'm way more excited for. So this might just be kind of one of those, like, it's a little bit more of a miss month for how I structured my TBR. With all that, those are all the books that I'm hoping to get to in February. Thank you so much for being here, spending part of your day with me. I would love to know what's on your February TBR, what you're in the mood for, what you're prioritizing this month. And if you have read any of the books that I talked about, I would love to know that, love to know your thoughts. But don't forget to like this video if you did end up liking it, subscribe if you want more content from me, and I really, really hope I see you on my next video. Bye-bye!